always wonder if my camera could be. How are we doing out there? Hope your roads are well. We have lots to do today. It's we've got let's see here, we've got like 4 breakouts, but they're and a lot of material to cover in the cost area. So once we get to the top of the hour, we'll jump right in. Oh, I need a little. Seemed like last time we had a few little, and not in technical difficulties in the not in the classroom, but it seemed like a few folks mentioned they had a hard time getting on. So don't know if there's anything new or what they've done. Seem like we have an abnormally large number of terms tonight, so try to explain clearly here. Wait for the got about a minute, and then I'm going to get started here because I'm going to tell you a quick little story that kind of relates to what we're doing tonight. In fact, I was digging through my stuff here, and I found this. I don't have a soft copy of it, or I'd find it. I may scan a couple of pages so I can show you some stuff. But a few years back, this was 2003, so it's been a few years back. I worked for a couple, or did some consulting into a company called Idaho Power, which is the main power utility in the state of Idaho. And at the time, they were, you have the little bill print. I think we do everything online now, but at one time we used to send out bills, like your power bill that would come into your, and and what they did at that particular time, they had a vendor who was doing that work for them. So they would take all the power information off your meter, they would send it to this vendor in Seattle, and this vendor in Seattle would actually print out all the bills, stuff them in the envelope, and send them to everyone's address for them as a service. And it was one of those projects that we had done previously. They had done it internally. They had done it inside their but they deemed it necessary that the outside vendors could possibly do it for them. So the particular project that I was on was to see if for one, we would do what we call request for information. The goal of the project was to say, can we still do everything using the existing vendor, and are we getting the right price, or is there better pricing out there? And so the project that I did, a lot of the techniques we're going to use today, I actually used on this project, such as analogous, which is, remember that we use that term in the scheduling one. We also use it tonight in the cost one. In other words, what was the cost from the previous year I actually went out to bid and I got RFIs, or requests for information, from 3 vendors, and I did the 3-point estimating technique. So there's a lot of things that we are going to talk about today I did on this particular project. That in a nutshell, what we ended up doing was we presented the data back, and if I can, maybe during one of the breakouts, I have a scanner where I might scan it so I can show you some samples of it. Is we actually presented back the data to see, is the existing vendor the right solution? We also did a thing which we call bottom-up estimating, where we actually looked to see what would it cost if we were to do it today, where we went and looked at all those costs. And when all was said and done, we ended up, they ended up choosing to go with a different vendor who came in at a little bit better price for them. But again, my job was simply to do the project, to do the analysis. And so a few things you'll probably see in here. If I'll see if I can scan these here and I'll show them to you. But anyways, the reality of it is there's some, and I'm going to see if I can take as many examples as I can on this, just so I can show you of how it's going to be used. But the end of the project was we managed the project, and we were actually able to provide them comfort knowing that there's a better vendor out there for them to do. So anyways, but what we're talking today about cost. And so our 3 nano Cs, we did all this work in scheduling, and I think we have one lesson where we do cost, which can be an advantage when you go for your PMP. If you go for your PMP exam, you're going to find that the cost is something that the PMP exam is going to really dive deeply on. In this particular case here, we're only going to be looking at a few things. We're going to look at how do we do a few cost estimating techniques. There's a few out there that are going to be just like the ones we did in the scheduling, which we'll talk about. And then how do you do your cost baseline? And again, just like we did a schedule baseline, you eventually will figure out how to do your cost baseline. But remember that 3-legged stool that we talked about: scope, in other words, what do we want to get done? Cost and schedule. So far, we've talked about cost and we've talked about schedule and scope, and now we're trying to figure out that cost equation. And so, which is the last one right here, which is how do you kind of keep all those in line? And there are different tools and techniques that we're going to use to be able to help do those things. So let's jump to the next slide here. So the first one here, we're going to determine cost of various types of estimating. And some of these are going to sound very, very familiar to you from where we did before. And again, this is when you're planning your project, you're looking at, so far we've done scope and we've done time, and then that's going to equal your cost. So keep in mind, scope, time, and cost are that 3-legged stool. And so what happens if I come to you and say, hey, I would like to add more scope? Most likely, if you add more scope, you're going to probably add more time. Well, possibly, but we learned a few techniques on how we could possibly maybe say, yeah, if I add more resources, but that means there's going to be more money. And so you're going to find that each one of those balances themselves out. And so the cost is the one at the end that is always the main one that gets impacted the most. So, or if I end up wanting to change the scope, therefore it might change the time, which may change my costs. So those are the 3 things you want to do. So just keep in mind that those 3-legged stool, as I'll refer to as. Okay. When you're doing cost estimates on your project, it can be you're trying to do your best to be able to get as accurate as you can. The biggest concern I had that I had in this example I gave of this vendor that is some of the vendors came in with too high of a cost for us, and so we immediately threw them out, so they didn't even get the business. So you got to be careful that you don't put too high of a cost, because they may not want you to do the project. Or if you say, I've got this really great idea, and you come in with too high of a cost, many times your sponsors may say, it's probably not worth it for us to do it. At the same time, if you do low cost estimates, it talks about here where you're basically are going to be wasting a lot of resources, because sometimes where I've seen where people have come in with low cost, they start into the project, they get halfway through, and because they didn't estimate correctly, they end up either having to cancel the project, or they end up spending a lot of extra time, precious resources, going in and trying to get additional money to be able to get their project done. And so anyway, so it's the Goldilocks principle, right? It's finding that just right syndrome on there. I've been in situations where I bid on equipment or services, and I bid the company I was working for, we bid way too high, and of course we lost the business. On the flip side, I've also have bid way too low, where as the project manager, I was in this constant state of what can we do to cut costs so we can still make enough money. So you know how that is. So it's finding that really nice, that balancing act there. So let's talk about a couple of estimating techniques. A couple of these are going to look very, very similar. And so just out of curiosity here, if you're planning to build a house, how would you go about estimating the cost? Anyone throw something in chat or want to jump in there? If you were to build a house, how are you going to go about estimating how it was going to cost? And I've built houses. Actually, I shouldn't say it. My wife has built houses, and I have been the recipient. Cost per square foot, perfect. Those are great. 3 times whatever. Jewel, you sound like you have built a house. So yeah, a lot of those are your cost factors are all going to be part of that. I hope you don't. My microphone doesn't pick up the vacuum coming up the stairs here. But so, oh, excellent one, Courtney. Yeah, comparing the current builds in the area to whatever it is, and so those are the areas those are the things that you end up doing. So sometimes what you can do is you can go through and they can put together an entire package for you, and you can go through and reduce your costs, etc. And so we're going to learn a couple of different techniques here that you're going to do to be able to excellent answers. Thank you. So a couple of these we've already talked about. Remember this one, analogous, which was I know that I built a house before. I think what somebody talked about here, and so therefore this is probably what I think it should be. Parametric, which is kind of breaking things down into segments, and then the 3-point estimation, we talked about that one, and then kind of the next one's the bottom up, activity cost, and vendor bid. We'll talk through all of these here in just a moment, but 3 of the 6 we've already have seen, but let's talk about these first 3 here. You remember the first 3 here, analogous, parametric, and 3-point on there. And so here we go. Analogous, again, past experience. Parametric is where you're kind of taking some of the unit cost. And so I know that each bedroom in the house on average costs $6,000. It's a 8-bedroom house, so therefore I know that the bedrooms are going to be $48,000, whatever it is, onto the cost. So you have some sort of parametric that you use, and then you can use this 3-point, which is the, again, optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely scenario. And each one, just like we did when you were asking your colleagues to be able to give you estimates for your schedule, you also can use this as an opportunity to be able, the same method, to be able to look for, are we in the ballpark? Going back to my example and that I did is we actually looked at a handful of vendors, but we actually summed up in almost the exact same columns who are the really optimistic vendors who are doing it for a low price, which are the ones that are doing it for a high price, and where are the ones that are kind of in the middle. And we use that in a weighted scale to be able to just see, are we kind of in the right time frame. So it's kind of like price comparison shopping. You know, you're kind of looking at 2 or 3 different products, and you're wanting to not go too cheap, but you also don't want to spend a whole lot of money. And so you can maybe find that nice product that's right there in the middle. So those are some of the methods there. So the next one that we're going to talk about here is what they call bottom up. This is the most accurate that you're going to do. In most construction projects, this is the one they're going to use. In fact, in a lot of project management, bottom up is going to be the process where you're going to do everything. You're going to try to get an estimate of everything, and you're going to roll it up. So in this case here, so every little activity in the line, you're going to get some sort of project cost. And the nice thing with some of the software development, software programs that are out there today, such as Microsoft Project and Smartsheet and some of those, you have that capability of putting all those lines. Remember all those things that we did in our schedule? we can take those schedule activities and find out if there's an individual who's working on how many hours and what's their hourly rate, and you can roll all that up really quickly. And in this case here, what you're doing is you're just breaking it down. What are we doing for that work breakdown structure? And we're decomposing, and you're basically just estimating each one, and then you're rolling that up. And then again, this is the most accurate technique, but it also is very time consuming. And I'll put a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek on that time-consuming technique, because oftentimes now some of the software programs that you have the capability of literally sending it out to everybody and asking for their estimates, and then rolling it back. I've ran projects where I have had to get up to 1,000 different estimates within about 24 hours. And some of the vendors were able to respond that fast back to me based on the work that we had given them. So, and then we were able to quickly roll it up. So, but bottom-up estimation, remember that one? That's going to be your most accurate and your most, it's going to be the most accurate one that you have. So again, for building your house, this is going all the way down to the nail. The one industry, I don't know if you've seen this or not, the one industry that does an amazingly great job of tracking their cost in the bottom-up estimation method. Can you guess? Which industry do you think it is? Anyone gone to the hospital lately? Oh, defense military, they're pretty cool. They're pretty good. If you've gone to the hospital lately, you get this nice little bill, and that one little extra cup of ice that they brought to you, you'll find out that they charged you $15 for it. And if you do and they itemize everything so well. And so anyways, it's just, or the Band-Aid, the $25 Band-Aid. So, and so the bottom-up estimation, they're really just watching their cost. So it's a great way of using. Probably, oh man, since I've gone to Agile, I no longer use this method. But before Agile, I used to always use this one as probably 75, 80% of the time. Okay, here's an example of the bottom of example. They've kind of rolled it up, but so you basically are taking all your cost and just doing a total cost on the bottom there. Okay, the next one is what they call activity cost estimation, and activity costs are where you're going to subdivide either internal or external. Let me give you an example here. So it sounds a little better. So what you're doing, you have kind of these direct costs. In other words, what are some things that are directly related to the project, and then what are some indirect costs? Sometimes indirect costs are things that we may want to spread across a couple of different projects. So, so indirect are divided across multiple projects. And here in just a bit, I'll give you a better example. So hold with me here. And then the other ones are going to be indirect, are going to be split kind of proportionally based upon how much the project uses them. So they've actually got a really good, we have a great example here for this one here. So I have two construction projects. One is a house, the other is a building. 5 employees are working on the house, 10 employees are working on the building. So all 15 employees work in the same office, which we pay $60,000 a year in rent and utilities. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to take that rent and utility and be able to subdivide it off across the projects here. So in this particular case here, how should I allocate the rent and utilities across the project? What would be fair for me so I can cover my cost, so I can build that indirect cost into my project? Anybody have any great ideas out there in chat? 3/4 building. Yep. Yeah, you're right on. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what you're going to do, Courtney. Get the gold star again, boy. I'm gonna have to break up my Monopoly money in here and start giving away Monopoly money for you. Maybe during the break I'll find it out. It's in the closet in there, I'm sure. And start to. So thank you, Courtney, for that's exactly. You're just going to take that 60,000 and then divide it by however many workers are kind of working on. That's a great way of doing it. But that's what they call activity cost method. And so in this case here, that's exactly what we end up doing here. Indirect cost of 60,000 a year, which is 15 employees or 4,000 employees. So then we take, I think, what did you say? 3/4 of the employees over here. The others are over here. And so therefore you just, 4,000 times 5, 20,000, et cetera. So that there's the indirect cost. So you can take those indirect costs and still apply them into that. area there. One of the things that I did in this project I did for Idaho Power was we did this exact same scenario of indirect cost. We had to, we knew that our vendor was charging us X number of dollars for the bill printing, but what did it take for all the work that it took for us to be able to get the actual file to the vendor? So we calculated all that as an indirect cost so that we could better understand that the full exact dollar amount of the picture of what we were trying to do. Here's a good indirect example. Not a strong one, but it's good. But so in this case here, you're doing each project and then your rent and utilities, you're kind of subdividing it off so you can get the total cost of the project. So that's one way of calculating those costs into there. Well, as we have done here in Foundry, is we have a breakout group, which we get to do. And let's see how long this breakout group is. It's a short one. Okay, about 8 minutes. So let's go into the breakout group, which is going to give you an opportunity to be able to do, here we go. It's going to give you an opportunity to do some of the bottom-up estimating as well as activity cost estimating. So bottom-up, whole thing, and activity cost. We have this indirect cost that we want to be able to build into some sort of an activity. It's called an activity cost. Don't exactly know where that is. And while you're in the breakout group, I'm going to see if I can scan some of these, and I'll see if I can find my Monopoly money. So here we go. So let's go into the breakout group. And looks like it's, 8 minutes. So I'll see you in 8 minutes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. Okay. Okay, so we just add. Well, that's easy. $3 million?
Yeah, 3 million.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So we would divide 100,000 by 40.
Yeah.
Yes, is that right?
Yes. Do 2,500 a piece.
How much did you say? I'm sorry.
2,500.
Okay.
It's 37,500 for that.
Okay. Yep. Oh.
And the next one's 62,500.
Okay.
I wasn't paying attention to the bottom up analogy. I was typing something else. Is it just the, how are you getting those numbers?
Oh, all of the first
The
numbers,
costs were already in there.
they were already in there. We just had to add them to get the total budget.
Oh, okay.
Those the numbers were provided. I don't know how they got them. Oh, is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
That was fast. I'm like,
I was like, where's the
there
rest
was
of it?
more.
All right, that wasn't nearly as challenging as I thought it was going to be. All right, good.
Like, I like these simple math.
Yeah. It's like, I can handle that at 9:20 at night.
I don't know how you guys do it on a later schedule.
And it was 8:20 here, and I already feel like I should be in bed. I wouldn't make it if it was 9:30.
That must really be hard, Megan.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. You know, I have a 2-year-old who wakes up typically between 5 and 6 in the morning. So
Oh gosh.
that's like, that part makes it hard.
Right, right.
But then I'm also like, the trimesters when the classes have been earlier, I run into, okay, I gotta, you know, make sure that my husband can put him to bed, or, you know,
Yeah.
or I'm
A
like,
different
you
set
know,
of problems.
yeah, I'm running him into bed before, you know, at least with this, I know he's definitely going to be in bed. He's definitely going to be asleep. I'll have, you know, usually at least an hour to sort of like catch my breath and get myself into learning mode.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it is for everybody. There's pluses and minuses.
Right.
Regardless, I think. Okay. Let me keep typing some notes.
If you're still about midway through it, we'll go. I do have all the answers, so we'll go through here just to see how you did here shortly.
That's a big.
I was so afraid I was going to be back behind there on my scanner. How are we doing? Let's take a look here at the answers here, just so we can walk through, see how you did there. That concept of bottom up, as well as the, oh man, where'd it go? Activity costs. So let's look here. So here is, so you kind of had this total budget. So you calculated the total budget there. And then in this case here, you're taking the $100,000 and dividing it off. This is going to be the indirect cost here into the total of what is the total cost for employees. So the 15 and 25. So $2,500 per employee. And then you're taking this expense here for the COVID-19, 15 times 2,500, and then 25 times this to be able to get kind of what your indirect costs are going to be. The main thing you want to walk out of this breakout group with is the understanding of the bottom up, which is calculating everything. And then the other one is the indirect or the activity costs, which does the direct as well as the indirect, and finding what the indirect cost is to add into two or more projects. Any questions on that there? Oh, and I did find my Monopoly money, and looks like Courtney, that was a $100 answer. I'll put it right over here and put your name on it. And who had the really great, $500 answer goes out to Joel right here for the Band-Aid, because I thought that was really good. So I'll put your name on that too. And I'll just keep them right there. And as we ask questions, I'll try to assign some sort of dollar value. So very good. All right, here we go. Let's keep moving. So the last, let's see. Yeah, the last one here is this one called the vendor bid analysis. And I have it back here in my scanner, but the next one at the end here, hopefully I'll show you some examples of a vendor bid. And a vendor bid is often you do, in this case here, you go out and you ask a vendor to be able to give you some sort of a cost, because they're pretty good. And so you basically send out make sure I can do this. You're sending it out to the vendors in some sort of proposal, whether it's an RFP or an RFI, and then the vendors are pretty good at giving you back some sort of bid from your vendors. So the first one is a term, you may have heard this term before. If you haven't, it's a term called RFI, request for information. And so I often will go to a couple of different vendors and to see which one is the right amount or is the right one for you. And you get the information back in what they call a request for information, which is kind of the way of getting information back from your vendors. And then what you do is that one of the key things that they are emphasizing in this one here, which I think is a good thing to do, is having these extra questions. What are some open-ended questions that you may want to ask a vendor, if you're going to be going out to RFI? A lot of times in my particular case, when I was doing this statement print process for Idaho Power, one of the open-ended questions maybe I wanted to ask is maybe, can you give me some references, or, how are you ensuring quality in your process? Just things like that. So just to help you better understand your proposal. That's what they call the RFI process. And so in this case here, and two things are wrong with this, but I didn't put the slide together, but I wanted to at least just point. But the first, I'm going to build a 1,000 square foot house. How much would it cost, and how long would it take? And in this particular case here, Yelp apparently is kind of a review site out there. Yelp is not used in the construction industry out there, just so you're aware. So, in this case here, so this would be an analysis. So if I get one back at 100,000 or 150,000 or 80, this one here may be a little bit lower quality because they have lower reviews. This one here, so I don't know which one you would possibly pick there, but that is the vendor bid analysis method of asking for cost equations on here. So now we have another quick little mini bog. Let's see, vendor bid analysis. So you're going to do a quick little vendor bid analysis on here, and an opportunity to maybe ask a few little questions that might be on there. So, and hopefully I'll get my things done here. So here we go.
Hey, Megan.
Hi, Christina.
I don't understand what the point was of that last slide.
Yeah, I don't either. I was like, wait, so what's wrong? What are we supposed to learn from this?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was like, okay, so what's the point? Whatever, I guess. All right. Case study: Amazon needs to hire 10,000 additional workers to help with this project. You've reached out to 3 vendors who are specialized in recruiting. Okay. Vendor A, 3 million for hiring 10,000 workers in 2 months. Vendor B, 390 million for hiring 10,000 workers in what? Oh, hey, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Your party.
Uh,
Yeah, I was by myself.
Huh?
I was just by myself for a bit.
Oh.
Did you guys already start?
We
Oh.
were just reading the case
Reading it.
study.
Okay.
Vendor C, 260 million for hiring workers in 3 months. All right. So request for information. As a project manager, write 2 open-ended questions you would ask the vendors to better understand their proposals. Let's see. I mean, is this the basis, or is there a basis behind this of we understand where this overall cost number is coming from? We don't have any question on, I mean, is that something that I guess we would already know? So
Well,
we wouldn't be wondering why they're charging what they're charging, or?
I think we would go back to our, you know, what we did before with our activity costs, or no, the bottoms up example. And our estimate for how much it was going to cost was 3 million. So we'd probably want to stay with a vendor that was around that,
Hmm.
if not lower. But also with the understanding that I believe it's a very specialized situation for a vendor to sign a contract and say, we are only going to charge this much, regardless of how much time it takes or how much. So,
How many obstacles, whatever.
yeah.
Mhm.
So one question I would ask is, you know, tell me about, you know, other large companies that you've recruited this amount of people for. Hear
Okay.
what the process is.
Mhm.
You know, because if vendor C has only
Mhm.
recruited, you know, 500 people at a time for a company,
Right.
then they may not have the resources or the capability to take on something
Mhm.
this large.
Right.
Or their estimate might be way off if this
Yeah.
is the first time they're ever trying.
Mhm.
I think another question is, I can't remember how much time we had to finish this project, but if it goes over their estimate of 2 months, does the cost increase, or will they
Oh,
continue
that's a good one.
to
Mhm.
work until they've placed 10,000 workers, or is
Yeah.
that more?
Mhm.
Um, what else? I don't know. Can't really.
That's two.
For number 2, I don't know, my thought process would be a combination of what you said already, Megan, about, you know, not going over our budget, but also looking at the time and depending, you know, let's just pretend we don't know how many people vendor C recruited for at the same time. So I'd kind of just go with vendor A, you know, based on it's with our original budget, but it's a good in between of basically the other 2 in terms of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if this were a quiz question,
Mhm.
that the answer would be C,
Mm.
just because it's the lowest one.
Oh, right.
Um, I think that's the answer they're looking for. And then with, question 3, vendor B, even though it's a lot more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of things we
Right.
don't know.
All right, let's take a look here at some of your answers. This one was kind of an odd one. I'm not going to lie. It's just kind of, we went through all these other ones, and we have this vendor bid analysis. And the likelihood of doing some of this, anyways, the vendor bid analysis is a good one, only to be able to capture your cost. But for this exercise here, I think they were looking for what would be something the project manager would possibly do in a RFI, and what are some of the questions that you would ask for. And so these are some of the answers. I don't know if you got, I know there were a couple other really good answers I thought out there, such as, how do you go about interviewing, and then out of curiosity, which vendor did you guys end up picking out there? Did you guys end up picking vendor C? Oh, you liked vendor A. Oh, okay. And the reason why you liked vendor A was they were the cheapest? Or what was the driver there? And so, if you're and you finish as soon as, vendor B, because they want to finish early. But again, it's finding that balance in between. A lot of times you can sort out the vendors, the ones that are super low, are the ones you may want to rule out. But the goal of this one here was to be able to help understand the vendor bid analysis. And let's go do it. Tara.
Hi.
Yes.
For Patty and I, we chose vendor A because even
From
though it was a
before
little
the
bor more
bond. Oh, I
expensive.
see. Are you there,
We-
Tara?
Can you hear me?
I'm not able to hear you there.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. My dog too.
Perfect.
Patty and I chose vendor A because for like a $40,000 difference, we got our workers hired 30 days sooner. So how much do we look at like the return on investment in these type of situations?
Yeah.
Because if we save money, but we still were 90 days out, are we really saving any money?
Well, I think you would be saving money on there. But when I looked at it and did it, I didn't look at this answer either. And I agree with you. I think there's some advantages of vendor A on there over the vendor C. They're talking here that it's the cheapest one, but a lot of times you get what you pay for. You know how that is.
Right.
So
Right.
maintenance overall vendor A seemed like the best. Yeah, cost of time. Yeah, so it's balancing those things out. So I'm in your camp, Tara.
Okay, I just want to make sure we were on the right
Yeah.
train of thought there.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one there, because I think you have to balance it. Not always picking the cheapest doesn't always work.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, and a real good case in point. Is there somebody else that has a hand raised? It's just not moving on me. Okay, did I do it right? Did I send it back? Sometimes a real good case in point here. Here, let me grab you, Vera. Hi, Vera. I can barely see you.
Hi. Yes, hi. This is the question I have. If Amazon needs to hire additional workers and we are examining the vendors who are specializing in recruiting, I don't understand then why the answer to the first question would include the type of materials they're going to use.
Yeah. I didn't have a chance to edit this document here. This was done by the course designer. But yeah, I would have probably asked some of the questions I thought that I heard in some of the breakouts, such as, how can you be assured you can get me the vendors, things like that. Is that what you're looking for? I think you guys had some of those like that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're different. If they're about to hire people, then I would be, and train people, maybe. Yep. Then I would ask them questions about the training process and the quality of people and their procedure they're going to use for hiring people that would give me some idea about the quality. I still don't see the connection with the material.
No, and you, just a wrong answer. I'm going to make a note for them to make that change. I would have put in there such as, what type of pool of resources do you already have? How have you already kept people trained? All those things that you talk about. So
Yeah.
I'll make a note.
All right.
Thank you. Great feedback. Thank you.
Thanks.
Might mean it's for resources. Perfect. Okay. Real quick. Speaking of low cost, one of the issues that we used to have in the state of Idaho is they had a rule that they always went with the lowest bidder, and the bidder. A lot of the people who would do these construction projects. Have you ever seen the construction projects on? And you always wonder why does it take them so long to do it? Especially if it's your exit and it's backing it up. And in Idaho, what they would do, as long as you were continually working on the project, they didn't care how long it took you. And so you, as a construction company, you could bid on a bunch of projects and get a lot of business and just take your time with the project. Anyways, needless to say, I knew that because I was actively involved in what they call Idaho Transportation Department in changing that law. So, which is a little bit different. Anyways, okay. Next thing we're going to talk about here is going to be what they call cost justification. Oh, is this the same in Amarillo? Okay. Yeah, it sounds the same. So let me say, so what is the best answer for 2? Is it vendor A or C? Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go for vendor 2. Oh, for answer number 2, A or C. Again, I would lean into the A camp because I'm a big believer, because it looks like A is going to get it to you sooner, and sometimes you just have to pay for the cost of that. And this is I'm gonna go ahead, Christina.
Hi. So my question is kind of more of a concern question. So we've kind of had some lessons where, we're in the situation that we're in now, where with your experience and expertise, what a correct answer or a better answer in some of the previous cases would be. Mm-hmm. But my concern is that if we're learning from you and the people who are creating the slides for you to, help us with in our lessons, since no one is here to speak to that, can you maybe find out how they're going to fix this problem? Because if we're learning one way in class and then we go to take a quiz,
yep.
Or our midterms or our final mastery, I think that they should have to provide us, not you, but they should have to provide us with a structured answer on, where we're going forward, because that's really concerning to me, not necessarily for the quizzes. I mean, okay, so I get it wrong. I don't want to get it wrong, because you get one wrong, you have to take it all over again. But that's different than our midterms or our mastery, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but myself as a student or you as a professor, if I was in your situation, this is frustrating because, obviously we're going to lean on you with your experience and expertise, especially, right? You're the subject matter expert versus them putting these slides together. So maybe next class can, hopefully they'll maybe get back to you and
I'll follow up. Yeah, two things that I'm doing, just so you're aware, Christina in class. Yeah, no, great feedback. Is 2 things that I do is at the end of every class, if there's something that wasn't really clear, wasn't really well explained, I usually will key that in every class. I do a retrospective on it so I can capture those things. I've captured this one here, and I'm going to be very honest. I don't think this one needs to be in this lesson. I think it could be taken out, and I think we could have replaced with a slide. The likelihood of doing a vendor bid analysis is very rare out there, and so, but I will follow up with that, because I think in this particular case, I think vendor the answer could have been I probably would have put both answers in there, only because of what you guys captured. So nice. Yeah. So I'll do a follow-up, and next class, Christina, I'll get you a feedback on that. Sound fair? Very good. Let's keep moving here. So the next piece that we're covering here is one that to answer the question of, will you use this a lot? This one I use a lot. And this one here is called cost justification. This is going back to your, and the method that we use is this thing called basis of estimates. And the basis of estimates is based around, do we feel really good about our estimates that we have in here? In other words, do you have a pretty, they're using the terms degree of certainty on there, and you have assumptions wrapped around your cost estimates. A good example of a basis of estimates would be if I was building your counters, your kitchen counters, and you were my stakeholder. Let's come back. I'm installing brand new fixtures in your home, and I want to be able to give you a basis of estimate for you so you feel pretty good about it. And I'm going to go through and say, I've looked at fixtures at Home Depot, at the other home supply store, and as well as Lowe's. And the average cost for this particular fixture is $48. And I want you to be able to give you that understanding that the price that I'm giving you, I've got a pretty good basis of estimates for it. And so what this allows you to do is this document helps you understand kind of that you have a pretty good understanding of all of your total cost, and you have some assumptions wrapped around them, and you have good quotes. And so what I've actually have done often is I may have bought the fixtures from another vendor, but just to make sure that they don't feel like I'm price gouging them, I would have provided them a basis of estimates from another vendor along. That's what this bottom one here is trying to say here. In other words, getting some sort of vendor quote. And a lot of times this is a basis of estimate that you provide for a certain amount of time. Interesting little graphic here that they put in here. And in this case here, they need to, your goal here is you want to be able to come up with some sort of justification of how you came up with those figures. And so when I'm doing my cost estimates, if I'm doing labor, let's say that I'm painting my room and I know that I'm going to charge you $25 an hour for my person who's painting the room for you, but I'm going to give you a basis of estimates and say, hey, I've talked to 2 other paint companies, and the hourly rate that they charge is $25 an hour. So this is just justifying the thing. And the thing here he's talking about, senior management are planning to review your estimates. Not to worry, he says he has it all up here in his head, and I can remember it correctly. And so your basis of estimates, that's what it is. And so it's mainly, you don't want to have it in your head. You want to have it all documented down so you can quickly be able to see it there. And so guidelines for justifying your estimates. When you do your estimates, sometimes you can do what they call a brainstorming method, where you get a team of experts. This is a great method to be used. This is what we use in software development. Sometimes what we'll do is for every particular item that we're working on, we actually will do what we call a size, or do we all agree that that this is what the cost should be? So in this particular case here, maybe I get 3 of my best friends who are contractors and say, hey, what do you think what is an average cost for putting in a fixture in this bathroom? And they can give you that cost. Use some sort of a cost estimating technique to use, various different methods here. The main thing you want to be able to do here is, as you justify your estimates, let your stakeholders know. And then anytime there's a possible risk, and we're going to talk about this later in about 4 lessons out, we're going to talk about risk. And if there's a fair amount of risks and things of that nature, those could possibly impact your cost. And here in a bit, we're going to talk about a term called contingency and management reserve, where if you find that you're going to have a fair number of risks, you're going to add additional contingency onto that plan. So sorry for the death by PowerPoint on this one, but I wanted to make sure we covered the material that was there. Okay, the next one here is we've given some sort of basis of estimate to be able to help understand. So remember that term basis of estimate is mainly I've included the cost of TV sets, and I've gone to Best Buy and all these other stores, and this is what the price should be, making sure it feels right. The next one here that we're going to talk about here is this one right here, which is the cost baseline. So similar to what we did in the schedule, we actually are going to now pull everything together and put it into the cost baseline for your project. So we're shifting gears here. Make sure you know we're shifting gears. We're out of the basis of estimates. So let's shift gears here. And so what you want to do here is as you get your cost baseline, you may need to adjust your timeline and where your costs are assigned. So it's getting that balancing act that are involved in this one here. Pretty good, not a bad slide here. So what you do is you estimate your costs, and then what you need to do is align that to your project timeline. So you're going to, most of the time, you're going to take your timeline and you're going to put your costs that are associated with the timeline, so you kind of know when and where your costs are going to need to be monitored as you go throughout your monitoring and controlling process, which we'll talk about later. So in this case here, we're looking across the board at our timeline. We're looking at where our costs are going to be, and then where we're going to adjust them accordingly. Okay, so think of it as this. I know that we talked earlier about my trip that I was going to make from here to New York City, and I knew that I needed to take me one day to get to Kansas City, another day to get to Cleveland, and then to get to New York City. So that's my time. But on top of that, though, I also have to make sure I have my cost associated for my gas. And so I'm going to estimate what my gas is going to be, so I can monitor my gas along that. So not only am I going to be having my schedule baseline for my schedule, I'm also going to say on day one, I need to have $100. Day two, I need another $120 for gas. Day three, you see where I'm going there. So you're baselining the schedule, but you're also baselining the actual cost, is what we're talking about here. So they both need to work hand in hand, and that's what the slide here is trying to convey here, which goes right here. It's your cost baseline, you're going to monitor and measure the cost throughout the duration. As you get further into the next level of project management, we'll start teaching you techniques that you'll be able to use it on based upon how much cost I'm doing. In other words, the example I give again of the gasoline, if I know that in one day I've gone through $50 worth of my gas budget and I need to be able to go another 5 days, I may be out of money. So it's the same way you do regular budget. And what you do is you use that to be able to predict when the money is going to be used. And so the best tool that they see out there that works extremely well is an opportunity. So you've taken your schedule and you've put your cost across there, and it creates this thing called a cost baseline, and it allows you to create this what they call an S-curve graph. And here in a bit, hopefully this graphic will help explain a little bit better the things that I wasn't able to explain as well, because I think sometimes a picture speaks a little better. So in this particular case here, this again was my cost baseline for my gasoline. So after 1 week, I should be at $100. After 10 weeks, I'm at $650. And then at 20 weeks, I should be at $1,000. So those are just kind of a baseline as I kind of put my cost across my schedule that I was going to be able to do. So let's see here. So in this case here, what is the projected expected cost at 10 weeks going to be? Yep, perfect. Sorry, mate, that was an easy answer. So it's only worth $50. But your name's on it, $50 to you. Thank you. Thank you. So nicely. Looks like, you all answered. So okay. Can I save the chat so I can, well, I'm going to just put his name right here on this one here. So nice. Okay. Yeah. So this becomes a really powerful tool, so you can kind of see when and where you're going to be spending your money. Okay. Okay. Ready? Oh, maybe I already, this was a poll. I thought there were two things in here. I thought there was a different, I wish I could change this one then. All right, let's see. Let's test your prowess here. At 10 weeks, how much? Ah, nice. Okay, yeah. So you can see how the graph works there. I apologize. I thought that I remember doing the poll and I went ahead and did it. So I'm sorry, I gave away the answer. So a little comic relief tonight for you. So, okay, show that to everyone. Great. All right, so here is, so in this particular one here, make sure there's not a poll on this one. No poll. And this one here, where do you think the costs are going to start to become elevated on there? So where do you think, which weeks do you see the cost kind of the most cost being elevated? Week 1, I'm only spending 100. Yeah, 20 weeks seems to be where most are going to be elevated right up here. Looks like you're spending a fair amount of money right in here too, about in the middle. And so, but this is kind of this, yeah, between 10 and 20 weeks. Perfect. And who's my first person? I have to pick the first person to give the $50 to. Let's see. Jamie. No, Jamie. Okay, Jamie. I'll put Jamie on here. Now that's a $20 bill. You don't want a $20 bill, Jamie. You want a $50, don't you? All right, very good. Okay. All right. So yeah, you can kind of see where the graph goes. Okay. So let's take a look here. Cost aggregation is where you're calculating the total cost by individual cost, and then you can do it by a time period too. So to kind of, I'm just going to read how money is spent across the timeline is a cost aggregation. If you want to make sure you have enough cash flow. And so what you're doing here is you're looking at this little chart here is very helpful to you because it'll kind of help you with your cash flow as we talk about the next couple of things. And so this cost aggregation just basically looks at the ability to see when and where you're going to be spending your dollars on here. And so there are 3 cost assignment rules that are in here that they use. And most of these are used for when you are actually delivering certain things. But here are the cost assignment rules. And the first one is what they call the 50-50% rule, where I'm going to give you 50% at a certain time frame and 50% at the end. There's a percent complete rule, which is done probably 90% of the time on projects is the percent complete. And then there's another one which they call weighted milestones. And the main thing you want to do is keep the same one across the board for tracking all your expenses on there. So that's the key there. And I'm behind, it looks like, but so keep that in mind here as we go through here. So the 50-50 rule is usually how this rule works is your costs are split in half. 50% is paid when the activity begins, and the remaining 50% is paid when the work is completed. So if my framing and roofing has cost me $17,000, I'm going to go ahead and pay $8,500 at the beginning just to be able to help get things started, and then at the end I'll pay you the rest. This is a very common rule that is used in the construction project management industry, which is called the 50-50% rule, where in other words, you want me to start on your work, I want you to pay me half up front and then half when we complete things. A very, very common method out there, especially in construction. Okay, so going back to our poll, let's do the poll here. Amazon decides to allocate hiring costs using the 50 interviewing costs, 50%, it will take 20 days to complete. How much will Amazon pay for interviewing on day number 1? Spot on, exactly. So right on day, I need to show you the results, don't I? Okay, so yeah, so again, 50-50 is half up front on day 1, and then when I get the work done, you're going to pay me the rest. Very, very common one that you're going to see out there in the project management industry, especially in construction project management. I've said that 3 times now, so I don't think there will be a question on that. I don't know why I said it 3 times, but just be aware of it. So The next one, another poll. I wish there was a little thing where I could give out dollars here. So here's the next poll here. Amazon decides to allocate hiring costs using 50-50%. Interviewing costs allocate, what is it? 50,000 will take 20. How much will Amazon pay for interviewing on day 10? Now, I did see a question in the thing on this one, so just be aware of that one. This one here, the correct answer is 0, because we would have paid 25,000 up front for the 50-50, and then 25,000 at the very end. On day 10, we're not going to pay them anything because we already paid them up front. So, show you the results. There we go. Okay, so keep that one in mind. In fact, I have right here all the questions that we do. In answer to your question out there too, the other thing that I've spent a fair amount of time on is I've been going through the questions pretty arduously and providing feedback to them. And so just so you're aware, I am trying to provide as much feedback as we can on some of the questions that are in there to make sure that they feel right. Sometimes there can be tricky questions, and I'm not a big fan of the trickier questions, because those are the ones, especially if you end up missing one and you have to start all over again. So, okay, let's go back here. One more poll. Poll number 4 tonight. Boy, lots of polls. Interview cost 50,000 will take 20. Oh, sorry. Let me go to the poll. Amazon's decided to allocate higher costs using 50-50. How much will Amazon pay? 20 days complete on day 10. Yep, day 20. Perfect. Let me show the results there to you. Yeah, exactly right. You're spot on. So in this case here, we got $25,000 on day 1 starting, and then $25,000 at the very end. Okay, so that's what they call the 50-50 allocating costs on there. Okay, this next one is probably the most common one you're going to use for measuring cost. At least this is the one that in my particular 30 years of doing project management is probably the most prevalent one that I end up using, and I use different methods of being able to see where I'm at today to be able to project where I'm going to be in the future. Different terms, such what they call it earned value analysis, as well as what they call budget at completion. In other words, your boss says, based on where we're at today, can you calculate for me where we're going to be at the completion of the project? And so there's formulas out there. We're not going to get into that. So you can go ahead and have your heart stop beating so fast, because we're going to stay a little bit in this one here, what they call the percent complete rule. This is estimated every certain interval, and so every 2 weeks. On some projects that I do, I would do this every single day because I was watching my costs. And this is a very popular method. They do talk about it, how it can be sometimes subjective, but there are different tools that you can use to be able to keep that away from being subjective on there. But it is often an estimate, and it's based upon the work that's done. My rule of thumb is I don't count it if it's not done. In other words, you don't. I'm a believer in what we call the. It has to be 100% done, or it doesn't get counted. So that's a rule that I abide by. And so, in other words, I'm not going to let you count the dollars on my budget until it's totally complete. So don't even tell me it's 50% complete. It's either done or it's not done, and that has been a rule that has saved me throughout my career. Where people say we're 50% done, and they often, in other words, when you're done, you're done. I can count it. So those are different methods here, but that's the percent complete rule. All right, we have a breakout group, and I'm running a little behind. In fact, I'm running a lot behind today. Let me see where we're at here. I think it's I may have you take a look at it. Look at the percent complete rule, so you have a good understanding, and then I may bring you back in, and then we'll have a chance to go through it. Does that sound fair? So let's get into the percent complete breakout group here. Here we go.
Hi.
Hey everyone.
Hey. Okay. So if interviewing costs 50,000, then we would to 40% of 50,000, whatever that amount is. Using the percent complete rule. When will Amazon start paying for interviewing costs? On day 5? Or at update 1?
How much would they? What's going on here?
Do you understand how to calculate this?
Yes. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Yes. So interviewing costs $50,000. So on day 10, we would need to pay whatever 40%
40%
of
of the-
$50,000 is.
Okay.
I'm very sorry to have to pull this back. But I'm gonna, yeah, we're gonna go over this in just a bit. So let me grab that here.
A lot of information tonight.
Yeah.
All right, I'm pulling everyone back because I still got more material to cover, and the last piece is like of course, the best, which is so don't go away, folks. Yeah, you've heard that story before, right? All right, so in this case here, you basically are looking at 100%. Remember that chart? If you look at the chart that we had here, so in day 10, which would have been day 2, which is 40% of the completion, we would have been at 20,000. How much? And then using the percent complete, when was Amazon start paying for interview cost at day 5? Because again, on this one here, they don't do it on day 1. That was the 50-50 rule. And then percent complete rule, finished paying on day 20, they'll be 100%. So that the main thing you're doing is you're looking at completion rate as to when and where they're going to pay for the services. Okay. This next one I want to dive into here is, any questions on that though? Oh, I apologize. I feel like I'm rushing us tonight. So, and I am. So, because I really want to cover the very last pieces and the pieces of the material that I think are absolutely critical toward the very end. And the next one here is what they call weighted milestones. And weighted milestones are just going to be concrete milestones where there's a assigned cost for this. And again, in the construction industry, this is used a lot. In other words, once I hit a certain milestone, I'm going to be expected to have this much money or be able to pay this much when this milestone is done. So in this case here, the whole framing is here, 17,000. Here's my different milestones that I have, and here's the dates, and here's the cost that would be associated with those on there. And so those are what they call the weighted milestone. And there is a breakout group here that I'm going to throw. Boy, oh boy. Yeah, I think we're okay here. This is the weighted milestone. Do you feel okay with the weighted milestone on there? So let me jump in here and throw you in the breakout group here for the weighted milestones. So again, this is just set milestones that are going to be coming along, and when there's a cost that's associated with them.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Hi. Okay.
Okay. There we go.
All right. So for reviewing resumes, 30% of $50,000, whatever that is.
Get my calculator.
15,000.
Okay. There we
Oh,
go.
whoops.
And then interviewing milestone.
What'd you say it was, 15,000?
Yep, 15. Which pairs with 15,000.
So this is conducting interviews, and it'll be 25,000.
Yep.
And then scheduling interviews will be 10,000.
Yep. That's what I got too.
Using subtraction. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Good job, everybody. We got it. Just in time, too.
I feel like it's just word soup in my brain. Just taking notes, like, I don't know. I've not actually comprehended.
Much.
I'm glad you said that. That's how I feel.
All right, we're back. We're back. All right. Let's take a quick look here. I have the answers here for you. And the one fortunate thing that we have is tomorrow we have a lab. And so I've mentally put myself a note that at the beginning of the lab, if it works for you, I'm going to walk back through some of these again, because I feel like because we're rushing through them, I think it would be nice just to go back through them just to make sure you feel pretty good about weighted milestone method. But again, weighted milestone method is at certain milestones. When certain milestones hit, that's when the percentage goes. So in this particular case here, the weighted milestone, how much will Amazon pay for resuming resumes? That's 30% of the $50,000 budget. So that's what they would pay. Applying the weighted milestone, which interviewing milestone is the most expensive. In this particular case here, it was this one here, the 50%. So, you know, it's kind of a weighted milestone on here. In fact, I think I'm going to bring some examples for us in our lab tomorrow on how, when and where we use kind of a weighted milestone. And the last one here, applying the weighted milestone, interviewing, which is the least expensive, again, the 20% budget. So those were kind of the methods there. All right, well, I told you that we saved the absolutely best for last. This next one here are going to be things that you're going to use throughout your project management career in there. So there's some important elements in these next ones here is what we call budgeting for the unknowns. We know that there's going to be events that are going to occur on your project and that are events are going to happen. And so you're going to take the costs. So in my particular case, I know that I'm driving across country and I may come up with some extra cost. So therefore, I'm going to do a thing called a contingency allowance. In other words, I'm going to take my project budget and I'm going to add on a contingency. Now, you got to be careful that you don't put too much in because your competitor may beat you, as we talked about earlier. So it talks about when add allowances only when needed, and you should have good documentation for the stakeholders. Most of my stakeholders have been really good about I've been very upfront with them and basically saying, I have a few high risks that I have on this project. Because of these risks, I added a contingency of 8% or a contingency of 10% of the total project that I built into the budget. So as you approve my project, I'm asking for 10%. I've always been just very cards up with them. And I'm not sure if you know the word cards up. Sorry, that's not it. That's a term. Cards up is a reference to where often you show everyone your cards. And you know, you're not hiding your cards behind but you're showing everyone your cards. And so I always like to just be upfront with my stakeholders and just let them know that I have a contingency, and I usually give some to the point they're making here some pretty good documentation to back up why I'm doing my contingency. Okay, so that is that's the unknowns. There are two type of contingency allowances. The first one's which we just talked about, is called a contingency reserve, where you mainly are looking for known risks. So a weather delay, as they're using the example. The next one is what they call a management reserve. And this is one for what we call an unknown unknown. And this one here in probably the last 5 years, I'm using that one right now because of the pandemic. These are unknowns. So when I started my project back in December that I'm doing currently, I didn't think there was going to be a pandemic, but fortunately in my management reserve, I took a certain percentage and I put it away in case I needed to be able to do that. I'm actually now in the process of actually drawing on that management reserve. So 2 types of contingencies: contingency reserve, where you're going to look for known risks. So in other words, I know there's a risk out there, so I'm going to build a contingency around it. So think of contingency of being, you know it's going to possibly have a weather delay. So therefore, my contingency is I'm going to put an extra $100 on my budget so I can buy umbrellas, whatever that is. Okay, my management reserve is going to be unknowns. In other words, things on my project that I may not know about when I planned it. And so I just sometimes like to be right up front with my stakeholders and let them know that. So in this case here, a pandemic is a perfect example, and I'm living and breathing that as we speak right now on a project I'm working. Okay, the last one on here that we're talking about here is reconciling the funding and the cost and adjusting your project scope and schedule. And again, remember we talked about the three-legged stool, scope and schedule and cost. You have to kind of adjust those, and so you have to consider all of those. So again, as schedule changes, most likely it's going to change the cost. And this, I think, is very critical. So what you do is this is what they call reconciling the budget. And so once your costs are estimated and have verified there's no discrepancy between the budget and actual work done, and you want to just keep those 2 in sync. And what you do here is you're in this constant state of looking at your budget and then comparing it to the actual cost to make sure your project stays on track. If we were I haven't figured out how to do this in my in-class classes, we actually use Monopoly. we do our plan around the board, but sometimes things happen. But in this case here, because I may have to watch my schedule might be that I'm driving between here and across country again, and I may have a breakdown. So my budget for my repairs maybe gets hit. And so you want to keep those in line. You want to balance those together. So you do this reconciliation. So in this case here, there is going to be what they call the budget versus actual. And this is where we end up, the actual is where we start using to be able to predict the future with. But in this particular case here, this is where you look at the budget. What did you budget for? And then what is the actual? What did you actually spend? And so you want to be able to compare that. And there are all different types of tools we use in project management to be able to compare those two to see where they're at. So in this case here, our framing and roofing, our estimated cost was 17 and our actual cost was 22. The other one is 18 and actual cost in this one here. So you want to be able to reconcile the differences in there. So just out of curiosity, oh, that's a good one, Patty. Yeah, this emergency fund that Dave Ramsey talks about. Oh, that's a $100 answer. Patty, nice job. Yeah, Patty brought up a great point in the chat about Dave Ramsey, I think, talks about this emergency fund. In other words, you never know when things are going to happen. So it's nice to have that money set aside. I think actually Dave Ramsey recommends having 1 month or 2 months worth of bills kind of put away in this emergency fund, because you never know when things are going to happen. And so the one advantage that I have had is, as part of the pandemic, it's my industry is still in demand, and so it's been actually pretty good. So, and I hope everything's going really well for you and your families as part of this, because I know a lot of us, in my particular case, I took a 10% cut in pay, but it works itself out because you don't have to worry, with that emergency fund. Anyways, on project management, it's the exact same way as your personal finances. You're building this extra contingency fund just to put away out there. Out of curiosity, though, what type of problems would you see with this? Why do you think framing and roofing could be actually more expensive? Any Any thoughts there? Why do you think the actual cost could be? The first thing that jumps out at me, which would have been $100 answer. Ooh, well, Christina, I think you took it right out of my mouth. That's a $100 answer. Christina, thank you. Yeah, stakeholders change their mind last minute. Metal is more costly than shingles. Oh, that's a change request. That's another one. Oh, Courtney, nice, Courtney. Okay, I'm going to be out of $100 bills by the end of the night. Nicely done. Yeah, both exactly. Homeowner requirements. Another one. Nice one, Rebecca. Wow, nice. Okay, yeah. Let me answer each one of those. Yeah, the one that is right in line is that material cost. And what I'm seeing in this one here, considering the fact that both the drywall and the framing went up in cost, that's probably a telltale sign that the material cost went up, or raw materials, as Courtney's talking about here. And so those are ones that, and then the other one is often maybe we estimated it and we had somebody who changed their mind. Hopefully we caught that in a change request, but if we didn't, then that could be why the actual costs are there. Okay, so reconciling cost here. What you're going to do as your project moves in, we're done with the planning. As we finish up planning and we're into that execution mode, you're continually monitoring your spending of your project work. So you're polling to make sure that everything's there. You're looking at your project schedule. So I'm monitoring my spending of my gas money. Again, I'm on my trip to New York, remember? I'm on my trip to New York, and as I'm watching how much money I'm spending on my gas, but at the same time, I'm monitoring my schedule. Am I hitting the days when I said I was going to do it on certain timeframes? I'm calling my friends in New York, who are my stakeholders, and making sure if things aren't aligned, which is, guess what? Looks like I'm 2 days behind, and looks like I may need a few extra dollars, Dad. Can you get me some money? And so you can see how that is. So you're monitoring that as you're going on your trip, on your project. And then of course you're continually letting your stakeholder know that there may be risks involved, such as, you know what, I got as far as Kansas City and just had, I wanted to have one more day of barbecue. And so I thought, oh, I'm sorry, Patty, I apologize. Texas has got the best barbecue. I apologize. So, but I went as far as Texas. So I thought I would drive to Texas to go get the best barbecue. So therefore I had a change in schedule. So therefore I had to let my stakeholder know. Anyways, so those are the communication vehicles. So those are the three things: monitoring your spending, make sure that the work is done, keeping that in line with your project schedule. If anything's not aligned, let your stakeholders know, and also if there's any risks that could impact it. So those are the big ones. This last one I think was probably extremely important elements there, and I wanted to make sure that you had a good understanding here of those. So what we covered is those cost estimating techniques, analogous, parametric, the ones we learned before, vendor bid, 3-point estimation, estimating techniques, project costs that need to be monitored. There are 3 of those assignment tasks that are out there, and I'm trying to make sure where we assign where it's like either the 50% complete rule or the 50%, and the other one was that weighted milestone that was there. And then delivering projects on time and budget is a good course, a good project manager. Again, you're going to be balancing scope, schedule, budget. Remember that 3-legged stool. And this particular lesson today, we spent a fair amount of time around cost and really understanding the cost, and then how does that tie into the schedule. The lab that we have tomorrow is going to help solidify how you pull this cost information and put it into a actual project out there. All right. Any questions here? And I will calculate here. Let me do a quick review here. A couple things you're going to want to remember from this is those estimating techniques that we had. Analogous, parametric, 3-point. Remember the role of the bottom-up estimate is going to be the most accurate, because you're bottom-up estimating everything up. That's the if I don't know, there's this thing called basis of estimate, which just basically helps you make sure that your cost estimates that you have some sort of basis of estimates that are in there. If I'm not sure if I have a fair amount of risks on my project, I'm going to add additional contingency onto my project. Let's see, make sure the one we briefly talked about, but we did a little bit of an exercise on, is this activity cost, where we looked at what the direct project cost and how can we spread out some of those indirect project costs that are there. I'm trying to think what are some other, we talked about the 50% rule, 50% up front, 50% at the end, percent complete as I work my way through, and then the weighted milestones, and different ways of estimating that are out there. I'm just, I think that little S-curve diagram is a very important thing to be able to look at on there. I thought that was an important element to have in there. And again, if you're using the 50-50 rule, it's always 50% of the cost on day one and 50% at the very end. If something happens in the middle, nothing. And I think that looks about right. And then just kind of keeping your costs and monitoring your costs, looking at your risks, and keeping track of your schedule, just like as I was driving across town. And Olive.
One question,
Yeah.
and I'm sorry, I know it's already late for everyone. I'm not sure if I missed something when we spoke about the cost baseline S-curve graph.
Yes.
When you asked the question, did I hear well that you asked the question, when will the cost be the highest on this graph?
Oh, yeah, great question. So can you see this, my screen here? So the cost, yeah, traditionally the cost which is the highest is going to be somewhere here in the middle.
Because as we're looking the bell curve, the projected estimated maximum of the cost would be after the week 20, so it would be maybe 24 or 5.
Mm-hmm. That's true. If it keeps going up, that's a good catch on the actual S curve.
Yes, if we are talking about the estimates, then it's not going to be 20 weeks. It's going to be after. But if you're speaking about the concrete numbers at the week 20, then that's what we see, no doubt.
Yeah. But what I have seen is often is right here in the middle is where most of your costs get associated. Sometimes at the beginning, costs are lower because you're still ramping up. And at the end, I would probably have this line probably go a little bit down. Let me grab my pointer here. I would have had this go a little bit so it's more flat. But yeah,
that would help then. Yes, because this way we're going further.
Yeah. If you keep projecting now you bring up a great point in that as you move forward in project management, as you get into a little bit of advanced techniques, you'll learn a technique of what they call earned value analysis. Where am I spending my dollars today? And you learn tools and techniques of where you think you'll be in the future.
Projected. Okay.
Yeah, for projecting. Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions I can answer for you? Tomorrow we have a lab, and will you bring your questions for me on there? And thank you for your answers tonight. And any questions that you have on the quiz, please let me know. I have been looking also over some of the answers to the quizzes at the ends, just to double check to see if there's anything we need to recover, or re-look at. Probably recover is not the right word. In other words, review would probably be the right word. Anyways, have a fantastic evening. Thank you for hanging with me tonight with a lot of material. And I will get back to you on some of the action items that I took from here. And we'll give you an update tomorrow. Have a great rest of your evening, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow in our lab. Talk soon. I need to click.